Thank you very much, President Noel Latif, and of course, Dean Bruce Weber, distinguished members of the Foreign Policy Association, faculty and students of Baruch College. I see some members of the Diplomatic Corps and Consular Corps. Colleagues and friends, good afternoon. It is a privilege to join you here today in New York, the global hub for multilateral diplomacy and geopolitics. I am especially honored to have been invited by the Foreign Policy Association, an institution that has brought foreign policy and global affairs out into public discourse for more than a century. The headlines of the last few days are a sobering reminder that we are living in a decade defined by what I have previously described as the three U's: upheaval, uncertainty, and unpredictability. Events now holding in the Middle East represent the latest proof that the new digital order is emerging, although we cannot yet recognize the shape this order will take. In the space of a few years, we experienced a global pandemic, a military coup in Myanmar, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, intensifying strategic competition, disruptions in global trade through tariff wars, the growing frequency and strength of climate-related disasters, and fast-evolving tech, such as AI, which are transforming both economies and battlefields. These uncertainties heightened by a shifting of global power, a reinterpretation of long-standing principles of international law, and increasing unilateral actions which challenge the multilateral system we have built over decades. The effects of this unpredictability is keenly felt in the Indo-Pacific, home to more than half of the world's population, 60% of global GDP, and two-thirds of the global economic growth. The Indo-Pacific shapes global trade, strategic stability, climate action, and technological development. It is integral to global stability and economic resilience, and this is what happens in the Indo-Pacific, and what happens in the Indo-Pacific affects the world. If the Straits of Hormuz are vital sea lanes of commerce through the Middle East, the Straits of Malacca and the waters of the South China Sea are critical in ensuring that these trade routes continue on to the dynamic economies of the Indo-Pacific. ASEAN lies at the heart of the Indo-Pacific, at the crossroads of global trade and geopolitical competition. The health of our regional economy depends largely on the security and stability of this global order. The consequences of uncertainty and unpredictability are immediate and concrete. Amidst these turbulent tides, ASEAN's centrality and leadership remains vital to the region. It is the most successful interstate organization in the Indo-Pacific region as of today. For almost 6 decades, ASEAN has been an anchor of stability in the midst of geopolitical rivalries. ASEAN is an honest broker and an effective convener, providing a viable platform to address matters of both regional and global importance, from maritime security in the South China Sea to the stability of the Korean Peninsula to transnational crime and cyber issues. As a founding member of ASEAN, the Philippines is committed to ensuring that our region of 11 countries, we used to be 10, we have a new member through the entry of Timor-Leste, and we are over 684 million people, and a gross domestic product of almost $4 trillion US, and we remain secure, stable, and firmly in the path of inclusive, sustainable development. Our aspiration as a region is to become the 4th largest economy in the world by 2030, not too far. We aim to invest in resilience against current and emerging threats to regional peace and stability. We aim to achieve economic integration that is innovative, dynamic, inclusive, and sustainable. And we will work to build a people-centered and a people-oriented ASEAN community. To translate this aspiration into concrete action, our chairship is guided by three main priorities, or what we call the 3 Ps. Our first priority is peace and security. We will champion peace and security through dialogue, adherence to international law, and strengthen cooperation against both traditional and non-traditional security threats. Second is prosperity. We will deepen economic integration, accelerate digital transformation, and promote growth and sustainable development that is inclusive and benefits all ASEAN nations. Our third and final priority is people empowerment. We will foster social cohesion, social inclusion, protect vulnerable sectors, and promote a stronger sense of shared identity and community across the people of ASEAN. Of these 3 priorities, peace and security will create the enabling environment for the attainment of a broadly shared, sustainable prosperity, which in turn enables our people to achieve their full potential. The theme of the Philippine chairship of ASEAN is navigating our future, together. This reflects this fact and reaffirms the collective power of our region. It is an era of in this era of fragmentation and unilateralism, ASEAN's response will be enhanced regional integration, stronger multilateralism, and peaceful engagement grounded on international law. The Philippines approaches its chairship with clarity of purpose to keep the ASEAN steady at the center of the Indo-Pacific, not as a spectator merely watching major power dynamics unfold, but as a proactive actor shaping the region's strategic landscape. It is auspicious that our chairship coincides with the 50th anniversary of the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia this year. For 5 decades, the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation has provided the foundations for interstate relations, not only in Southeast Asia, but in the larger Indo-Pacific as well. These foundations are rooted in the principles of mutual respect, non-interference in internal affairs, peaceful settlement of disputes, and the renunciation of the threat or use of force. With 58 high contracting parties and more nations expected to deposit their instruments of accession during the commemorative event we will host in Manila, the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation remains one of the clearest expressions of ASEAN's commitment to a rules-based order. In this milestone, ASEAN will renew its commitment to shaping an international order founded on the rule of law. The Philippine chairship will work to deepen cooperation among the high contracting parties to the treaty across the globe to promote these principles of peaceful coexistence that have been the bedrock of peace and security for the last 6 decades. Friends, 2026 is a very consequential year for the Philippines and for Philippine diplomacy. In fact, I am here in New York to support President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. as he campaigns for the Philippines to take a non-permanent seat at the UN Security Council with elections to be held in June. The Philippine campaign is built on our country's reputation as a reliable partner, an innovative pathfinder, and a committed peace builder. It is the same values bolstered by the Philippines' established reputation as a consensus builder that our country brings to bear as we chair the Association of Southeast Asian Nations this year. The Philippines believes that resilience is built collectively. Through ASEAN, we choose integration over isolation, cooperation over confrontation, and respect for international law over force and coercion. Navigating our future together reaffirms that ASEAN's time-tested values of cooperation, community building, and commitment to the rules-based order can become more relevant now given our increasingly fractured and unpredictable terrain. And it is an unequivocal recognition that a united ASEAN, firmly at the center of the regional security architecture and actively shaping the new geopolitical landscape, remains the best guarantee for peace, stability, and broadly shared prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. Thank you very much.
context of your excellent prepared remarks, you used the word navigation twice, and then you spoke about a code of conduct between ASEAN and China, and I kept thinking about these disputes about islands and the concept that China believes it should control the South China Sea. So I would like your responses in terms of that issue.
Just repeat the last part, please. The code of conduct, the exact name is ASEAN-China Code of Conduct of the South China Sea. This has been part of the discussions since 2000, before 2000, when this issue has erupted between us. What is the situation is that the South China Sea is a very important navigation route. That's why when in my speech I said, if the Strait of Hormuz is important, the Strait of Malacca and the South China Sea is equally important because these are navigational routes. Now, because of the dispute that we're having, that was how ASEAN, all of us think that we should have a code of conduct. It was actually in 2002. The real intention is since as early as the 1990s is to have a code of conduct, but it didn't. But we failed. Instead, in 2002, we came up with a declaration of a code of conduct. Now we want a code of conduct that is legally binding. That's why it's taking so long, the negotiations, more than a decade. I think it's 16, 17 years. But we have, ASEAN is heavily invested in this code of conduct because we think that it's about time. There are claimant states, yes. We know who we are, Brunei, Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. But it's time to really discuss this issue and really avoid accidents that may become a flashpoint. This is what it is all about. And that's why we have come up with this document. We think that it may not resolve all the problems concerning the dispute, but this is the best way to manage the dispute.
My name is Andy. As the professor said, I'm in his class. I'm a sophomore here at Baruch. My question is kind of a follow-up to the last question and a little bit more general, but just as you mentioned in your remarks, like as the Philippines is growing, its goal is to become the fourth largest economy as the chair of ASEAN, trying to get back onto the Security Council. How does the Philippines plan on using that role to kind of mediate between the U.S. and China? As one of the main flashpoints is China-Taiwan, and as you've mentioned a few times, the Strait of Malacca is very important in that, and I know in the last few years the U.S. has built a lot of bases around there to try to position themselves strategically. How does ASEAN plan on negotiating between the two sides to try to keep peace and trade, even if something does arise?
Well, let me just be between the U.S. and China. I don't think that's really giving so much credit to us. But what ASEAN can do is we always, just like we talk about the Middle East issue, we just came out with a statement on the Middle East just a few days ago, 2 days ago. We just request that people go back to the table, exercise self-restraint, peaceful settlement. It's the usual mantra that we give because that's the only thing that we can really advise and really make statements. We watch, in fact, China and the United States are very, very important dialogue partners. We have not only each and every one of us good bilateral relations with both countries, but in terms of an ASEAN, we have excellent discussions, but focusing on functional cooperation. So that is how we're doing things. But I want to veer from that and go to the Philippines. For the Philippines, the Taiwan issue is very important. Why? It's only 70 nautical miles away from the northern part of the Philippines, and we have 200,000 Filipinos there in a very small island. So these are the concerns that we have. We don't want anything that will happen or any conflagration. I can describe what will happen, but it is very important that everybody should always exercise diplomacy, dialogue, and try to settle things. We cannot, I don't think we intend to negotiate between the two superpowers.